Hey everybody,
Hey guys,
welcome to the CAD class podcast. What is this? Episode number 5, I
this is
believe.
episode number 4.
Just skipping ahead here. So we wanted to do a little bit of a different format this week. So first off, welcome everybody. We know this has been an awesome week. A lot of book downloads. There's been a ton of activity on the Discord, and Jake and I are getting a lot of the same questions that we've gotten throughout the history of this course. So we're hoping that this format works a little bit better for you. You can come in. You can say hello, tell us where you're calling in from. And if you have any specific questions, please do leave them in the chat because we're going to try to get to some of those questions. So what we plan to do is go through the Discord and then go through some of the chat and hopefully interact with you all and answer the kinds of things that are difficult to answer in a book or in the video course format. So welcome everybody. It is super nice to have you. I'm Josh.
I'm Jake. So for a lot of you guys that don't know, maybe some of you guys that just downloaded the book online, maybe you guys picked it up on Amazon. Thank you very, very much to everyone.
You guys are
For
amazing. Yes.
just the book content, this is the first time that we've done office hours, is what we call it. But for those of you that have purchased our course, every week we do one-on-one or a very small classroom of Zoom calls, so we can share our screen, you can share your screen, and it's really, really, really fantastic. A lot of people tend to come in here with hyper-specific questions, and they go, I need help, and something is going on my screen that is completely different to your screen. And this is where either Josh and I can control your screen and then actually show you exactly where that button is or exactly what we would change, etc., etc. And it just makes for a little bit more of an in-depth learning experience. It's very similar to our Discord link where someone has a hyper-specific question, then they jump into the Discord, ask question, and usually something from our community or either Josh or myself can then go in and answer it. But the Zoom is just obviously a little bit more snappy, a little bit more live. But a lot of our students have a ton of success through that. And so we wanted to bring that into the general public as well. So we can't promise that we'll answer all of you guys' questions. We'll try and get through all of them that come through the live. And we'll try and get through some of the main ones that we see people having trouble with on the Discord. But we'll try and get through as many as we can. But that's the plan for today.
Tis indeed. All right, so Jake, let's dive right into it. So we're going to do a lot of screen sharing, and then I want to work through some of the questions that we have on Discord, and then maybe you and I can just talk as we're doing that about higher level things, like we said, that are harder to cover. So the first question, I think the thing that that trips up a lot of people is the project tool. What is the project tool? And specifically, when it comes to the filament guide, which is lesson 4, week 1, how do you think about using that tool? Where is it that people are getting tripped up on Discord? Can you shed some light on that?
Absolutely. So the project is a really funky tool. It's one of those tools that's fairly hard to describe either in book format or in video format. You literally just have to do it, and then you'll start to kind of understand where it's useful and where it isn't. And there's really 2 different formats that people rush into. One is more obvious than the other. So you can kind of think of project like a projector, where it's taking information from a projector and putting it onto a screen. The other way to think about it is that it's like a shadow. If you have a hand up here, it is casting a hand-shaped shadow onto the pavement on the ground. That's pretty obvious. All the information over here is now over there.
So information in one spot is now in another spot. Can you elaborate on what that means?
So in the world of CAD, you can kind of think of them as 2 parallel planes. So if you draw a circle over here, you can then project that circle directly over onto this plane. That's kind of easy to understand. But you can also do that for angled planes as well. So you can project a circle onto an angled plane that will give you an ellipse. And it is, if you're looking directly from the circle's point of view, then the center of that circle and the center of the ellipse are exactly in line with each other. So that's fairly easy to kind of understand. The tricky part with that is that when you're using it, it doesn't update. So if you make a sketch, let's say you make a circular sketch and you project it onto an offset plane, that's pretty easy. But let's say you want to then move that circle to the right. That's okay. But then when you go and check on that projected circle, it's now in the original place. It hasn't actually shifted over. So there is some degree of it's locked in place-ness. So you have to be really, really fairly careful with that. The other part that's a little bit more tricky to understand is that you can project the geometry or the information from a surface onto itself. I think one of the best examples that we have is in the Saturn V Rocket, where we go from the tube to our first tapered extrusion. So we'll do two different examples on that.
Yeah,
Let me go ahead
it.
and share my screen.
Let's do it.
All right. So we got Fusion 360 open. I've just got a pretty normal sketch. First things first, this sketch palette on the right-hand side, I get a ton of people asking me if this is useful, if there's anything on there that's important. There's basically only one tool that I've used on here, that is Slice. Other than that, you guys can close it and move it off to the side. It just takes up a ton of screen real estate.
I was going to say, we don't see a sketch palette on your screen right now.
Oh, you don't?
There? No. If it's there, we don't see it.
Very strange. Okay. So
now we know.
You can ignore it. Oh, my dialogue or my browser as well isn't showing.
Yeah, we can't see your browser.
Yeah, that's fine. Doesn't matter.
That's fine.
All right. So first things first, I'm going to make a sketch. Go back to that sketch on the front plane, and I'm going to make a circle. We'll make this 25 millimeters, pretty normal. And then I can finish this sketch, and then we'll make an offset plane. This one can be 25 millimeters away. And I'm going to make a new sketch on that plane. So if I orbit around, you can see my circle's kind of floating in front of there. So I'm going to go into Create, Project, and Project. So the geometry that is asking me, what do you want to project onwards? That's obviously going to be the circle. I could also
there's the shadow, by the way. That's really interesting, right? So as you, and that's one of the things in Fusion, like as you hover your mouse over things, you tend to get hints. And I think this is where some people also go wrong, is slow down and pay attention to the user interface features that appear as you do things. So this one's really nice. This gives you a project. So keep going.
So I can select that. So you guys can't see my dialog box right here, but that's fine. I'm basically just clicking OK right here. And that's now showing me my purple line as well. If I click this, you guys can see that I have this little project icon. A very, very common thing that people run into is they go, all right, I want to click and delete this. Sometimes you can very simply click on a projected bit of geometry and hit delete. As you can see, right then it went away. Very often it doesn't, though, and people get really confused. And the trick is that you have to select the project icon, make that go away. Then you can see our projected purple line now becomes a normal sketch. Then we can select that and hit delete. But that's kind of
that's annoying.
That is super annoying. Yeah, it gets people really tripped up.
All right, so we've got a circle. We've got it projected onto a separate plane, which is directly behind it. Great.
So this is the kind of normal information that you would expect. If we jump into our filament guide project, I'm just going to run into, where is it? There we go. So the project that you use, or the part in the project where we use the project tool, is going to be getting the information for this arm right there. And we basically want to have this sweeping curve to be tangent to one of these straight edges down there at the bottom. And you need to have the information from that straight edge when you're actually sketching that arc. That's essentially why we use it. So I'm going to go into, I'm actually going to roll back the timeline, and we're going to make this curve from scratch. So this is going to be on the top plane. And as you can see, we actually don't have an edge that intersects with this top plane. It's just kind of a flat surface right there. So that's why one of the reasons that we would want to use the project tool. I would like to project this top edge, or this bottom edge, either one, onto the plane that's actually cutting it in half, if you can see that. So I'm going to type P for project. I'm going to be clicking on this line. You can see it gives you this little red preview. Then I can click OK. And that's now adding that purple line right there. Now, if I want to make an arc, a 3-point arc, I've now got an endpoint that I can snap to, make this however big I want. And you can see as I move this, if you look at the this point right there, at a certain point, it will actually automatically add in a tangent constraint. This is one of the really nice bits of Fusion where it kind of understands what you're going for, and it can just automatically put in some constraints for you. I think another one is, it's going to be saying, all right, well, maybe you'd want a vertical constraint between that projected point and the center of the arc, or wherever you're clicking. But we just want that tangent constraint. So you can see it pops up right there, so we can hit escape. So now the only things that we can adjust is the location of this of the second point, but it's always going to be locked into that projected point, and it's going to have that tangent constraint. Again, if you didn't see that, you can always delete it. If you accidentally made an arc, but then it actually wasn't tangent to that whatsoever, then you can always go into your constraint menu, go to tangent, select your arc, and then you can always click on the projected line right there. Pretty easy, but for people that are just getting into Fusion, this is one of those areas that that really throws people off, and that's totally okay. The other parts of project that I also see really messes people up is when they're trying to understand the Saturn V rockets that we have in our week 0. Which is one of my most favorite projects that we actually do.
I love this project.
Love the project. Yeah, it's fantastic. All right, so I'm going to roll back the timeline. So the first thing that we do, or actually, as you can see, the next couple steps is to make this tapered extrusion on top of this donut. And actually, let me double check. What are those values? So we want to go up 30 millimeters with a negative 16 degree taper. So the reason that we actually have to make a projected sketch, just a little hint, is so that we can have this ring to select on and this inner ring as well. You can see I'm actually selecting the inner tube, which I don't want to do. If I turn on the sketch, there we go. Now I can select this ring and this inner circle as well. You can see I'm not selecting the actual inner tube, just that inner circle. So now I can actually hold down Command or Control, and I can select both of these profiles at the exact same time to essentially make a larger circle, not just one or two of them. So I'm just going to go ahead and do this all for us, but I'm going to go around the wrong way because I see a lot of people going, well, why can't I just select this ring and then extrude it with a taper? And you'll see exactly why. So I'm going to hit E for extrude. I'm going to select this ring icon. I'm going to put it up 30 millimeters with a negative 16 taper. Oops, negative 16. There we go. And as you can see, it has just made this kind of strange pyramid cone-shaped thing totally wrong because it hasn't included that center circle. It hasn't included that center bit of information. So this is just the wrong way to do it. So the correct way is to then make a sketch on that top surface, and I'll actually still keep that 3D view for you guys. Then I can type P for project. I can select this ring, and you can see that actually identifies the outside ring and the inside ring at the same time. I don't have any, there is no information on the inside of this circle. That's why we're doing a project, is so that we have the outer ring and the inner ring to make an enclosed ring and an enclosed circle at the same time. Currently, I'm just highlighting the inner tube of this because there is no circle. That's kind of the whole point of the project tool. So when I click this, now I have both of these circles that I can now extrude together at the exact same time. So we'll put this up 30 millimeters, and then we'll add on negative 16 degree taper, click OK, and there we go. That's how we get that angle.
Got it. So you have a lack of information, and you're essentially wanting to grab the circle part of that, which yeah, that makes a lot of sense, I think, to me. I'm curious to know if you guys are listening, if this is something that you ran into or have run into, if this makes sense. Leave a comment in there if you are listening and curious to know more, or this makes sense.
It is kind of funky. I get a lot of people very confused by this, and it's really annoying because it's obviously so elemental to CAD for being able to take information from here and project it over there. You'll find that on every single CAD program that has ever been,
or parametric CAD at least.
Yeah, but it's equally confusing and essential. So beginners that are coming into it, they go, "Well, I don't really understand what's going on." And it's like, no, you got to push back that. That's completely fine. Got to keep on going. Let me pull that back. There we go. All right.
Awesome. So the project tool, just to summarize, the project tool in 1 to 2 sentences, and then we'll close this out, and I've got the next question lined up here.
Fantastic. So the project tool is all about projecting information from one surface to another, whether that's parallel planes, angled planes, plane to a curved surface, really doesn't matter. You're taking information over here, sending it over there. You can
And play around
also
with it.
project.
Yeah, exactly. And play around with this tool.
Absolutely.
You know, if this is something that you're playing, if you're trying to figure out how it works, I think the best bit of advice I have in Fusion software is if you're unsure about what something does, try to play around with it to the point where you get it. So use it, try it, break it. I think is a pretty good strategy. Is what can I do so that this won't work? What do I predict will happen if I do this, and then do the thing and see if it follows your prediction? I think the same with constraints, right? So when you're applying constraints, I think we tell people all the time, if you're not sure, if you don't have a fully defined sketch and you're not sure why you don't have a fully defined sketch, the best thing to do is to grab it and pull it around and move the endpoints and move the lines themselves. Try to move things around until you quote unquote break it, so that you can discover what part of it is not constrained, not defined. Like that, exactly. Click it and drag it and move it. And so if you were doing this, Jake, for example, you're clicking the circle and you're moving it. What does that tell you when you do that?
So there's 2 parts to a circle. There's many parts to all geometry. But saying that something is defined and constrained kind of means that both the size and the location are totally locked down. So for example, this circle right here, you can see the outer perimeter of the circle is blue, therefore it is undefined. Obviously, I can change the diameter. So you say, okay, well, let's define that. Let's make this 30 millimeters in diameter. Great. This is now fully defined. The outer is black. But then you'll say, all right, well.
Yeah, good.
All right. And then let's say, well, okay, I'll do that to this circle as well. Let's make this 30. But it's still blue. And that's because the center is still movable.
So this brings me to another really important point. So the center of this circle is not defined. You didn't define the center of the first circle. So what happened?
No.
So what
So
happened?
I put this at the origin, which is the only locking point in the Fusion 360 universe. Therefore, its location is already defined. But this location is absolutely still not defined. I can click and drag this anywhere I want. Even though I do have one dimension totally locked in place, it's still movable. Not good enough. I could add on some constraints. I could add on the horizontal vertical between the origin and the center of this. But now it's only constrained up and down. It can still move left and right. It still requires another bit of geometry. Let's make it 30 millimeters again. Now we have a fully defined sketch, and both these circles are completely constrained.
And that's only because, though, that first circle is locked to the origin. Exactly. If that first circle weren't locked to the origin, both of those circles would move along the horizontal axis.
Absolutely.
Right. So, and that's where I think playing around, and also this is another important point when it comes to Fusion. Fusion actually makes guesses about what you're trying to do. And this applies also to the next question that's coming up, which is horizontal vertical constraint. A number of people have asked, why is it that I get an automatic constraint if I draw a circle somewhat close to the origin, let's say? Go ahead and draw, delete these circles. Let's draw another circle somewhat close to the origin. And then I want you to apply a horizontal vertical constraint and tell me what the heck Fusion is actually doing. Yeah.
So the idea with a horizontal vertical constraint, as the name implies, you're making 2 points or a line, either horizontal or vertical. If you are adding a horizontal vertical constraint between these 2 points, it's going to snap it into place and constrain it at the same time. So now it can only move up or down. So this would be a vertical constraint. It's only constrained to be able to move up or down. Similarly, I could delete that and then move this over to the side and then add on the exact same constraint. And now I have a horizontal. It can only move along the horizontal axis. It cannot move up or down.
So Fusion essentially makes a best guess. It says, hey, you've drawn this circle close to the x-axis or close to the y-axis. I'm going to guess that what you mean when you say apply horizontal vertical constraint is to do it to the nearest axis.
It's as you can see on both those examples, I didn't have it exactly over. In fact, you can't get it exactly over. If you look down to the bottom right-hand side of my screen, it's actually showing the coordinates of this line. And it's like, yeah, I can get it kind of close, but I'm still off by, negative 0.03 millimeters, which is tiny.
Yeah.
It's like you can never get it perfect. And that's the whole point, It's like it will never let you be exactly over the origin unless you add in a constraint. In fact, you don't want it to, because then it'll give you the illusion that it is constrained, even though it isn't. And very often when you're doing sketches, if things aren't locked in place, if things aren't fully defined, they can move without you knowing and without you asking, more importantly. So making sure that everything is fully constrained is hyper important. Unless
Especially
we
when
state
things,
otherwise.
yeah, especially when things are referencing other things. So points referencing points, lines referencing points, anything that's referencing something that itself is moving or can move can become a problem in those later sketches.
Absolutely.
So
the
we
other
had
thing that's fairly important that I see kind of helps out a lot of people. Because I think when we think of the horizontal vertical constraint, it's kind of easy to apply that to a line. You go, okay, well, I'm going to make 2 lines here. Both of them are obviously at angles. They're almost horizontal. They're almost vertical. And using that constraint kind of corrects them. And you go, okay, that's fairly easy. It's going to analyze this line and say, yeah, it's more horizontal than it is vertical. Therefore, it makes it horizontal. You go, okay, that's fairly easy to understand. But I think it really trips people up when you think about 2 separate points that are then becoming horizontal or vertical. And you can kind of just imagine that there is a line, that does connect these 2 points. You're saying, all right, well, this line is almost horizontal. It's almost vertical.
Yeah.
And by selecting the 2 endpoints of that, it does the exact same thing as if you were to just select that line. It does the exact same functionality. So it's a really good way to think of it.
Cool. So let me expand on this a little bit. So one of the questions we had was from Mr. Mitnick in the Saturn V Rocket project. He says, "Hi guys, finished the rocket yesterday, but afterwards I was kind of thinking if I grasp all the content covered. I don't really have a clear picture of the difference between horizontal, vertical, coincident, and tangent. Perhaps someone could explain them a bit better to me." So I think this is a good opportunity to do 2 things. One, I like anytime we're giving hints and information about how to do things, I like to bring it back to how would you discover how these things work on your own. So the first thing I'll say about these constraint tools is, Jake, can you go ahead and can you actually see the information? If you hover over a constraint, does it pop up in our window? See if you hover over one of the constraint tools.
Oh, yeah.
And does it pop that up? No. Okay. So in your program, when you hover over a tool and you leave your mouse there, it will pop up and tell you what that tool does. It's not always enough information really to understand it, but usually it's pretty good. Usually the information in there,
some of them have pictures and it's a little easier to see what's going on.
Right. So if you're unsure about how one of these tools works, stop, hover your mouse over the tool, let the little pop-up dialog box appear, and then read the information encapsulated in that, and then try to apply that information to some kind of constraint in what you're doing. So I think the general flow here is first, right, use the UI hints that appear here to understand what the heck it actually is, and then put what you believe is your knowledge to the test. Try to sort out whether or not you can do the thing that Fusion is telling you this tool is supposed to do. I think, to me, that's like the best high-level thinking, the best high-level way to go about discovering how this program works. Now, that said, can you explain the difference between horizontal, vertical, coincident, and tangent, and kind of tell us a little bit about how you think about applying constraints? Because I think we've done that.
Some examples, yeah.
Because
it does get fairly confusing. Well, it's very simple at the beginning, and then you realize that you can add these constraints to more and more geometry than you actually thought, and then it becomes more confusing than that. You go, whoa, you can add a tangent between 2 circles? How does that work? Or you can add coincident between a line and a point? What? So this is so we'll kind of go through a bunch of examples here today. So I think we already did the horizontal vertical one to death. We can also do multiple points can be aligned either horizontally or vertically, and we can also say that a line is horizontal or vertical. You cannot do that to a curve or a spline because obviously there is no straight line in an arc. That's pretty obvious. As far as the the coincident constraint. It's actually a little bit more confusing than people think. So I'll do the tangent one first. That's the more obvious one. At a very fundamental example, if you have a line that is tangent to a circle, it means it only touches it at one point. It kind of smoothly touches it at one point and then continues along the arc. You can have a line touching a circle. That's completely fine. You can also have a line only touching a point, and then it continues into it. You can have this line be tangent to another circle if you'd like. A really good example that I like is when people think about a bike type or a bike chain is a really good example because obviously it's going off a small sprocket onto the chain, then back onto a larger sprocket. So you can see we've got tangent constraints all the way around here. So you can imagine the chain is going around there all along, and it's just kind of neat. It doesn't have any corners. It leads into it, and it will do that regardless of how large these gears are. What you may have noticed over here is that I do have a little white point right there. And that's because this is actually not connected to anything. So this line where it meets this circle, and again for the other 2 points, this is a tangent and a coincident connection because we have a line touching another bit of the geometry at one point. But this one is saying, hey, it's a white dot because it is it's not an enclosed profile. You guys can actually see that the circles over here are filled in with a little bit of sky blue, but the inside of here is the same color white as the outside of the universe because this is not an enclosed profile, obviously. There's an opening right there. And Fusion is telling me that this is where the opening is because I have a little white dot. That's a really important kind of functionality to understand. Now, I can add on a coincident constraint between that point and this circle, and that now connects them. So now I've got my enclosed profile there, my enclosed profile here, and my enclosed profile right there. Great. We've got all those three things. So you can have lines tangent to curves or circles. You can also have circles tangent to each other. Similar definition. They touch at one point. That's the idea with tangency.
Very nice. Yeah, and I think, again, with the UI functionality, so you pointed out the white dot that was not filled in. Fusion is just full of hints and information like that, but you have to just get in the habit of looking very carefully at drawings. I would say you have to get in the habit of noticing things. Like the hardest part about learning a lot of this software is like I don't know what I don't know in the beginning, and so it's kind of overwhelming. But as you get better, and I think as you do more practice in our book or in our online course or whatever it is that you're taking, I think slowing down just a tad to ask yourself those basic questions like what is, oh, look at that, that's pretty cool. What the heck just happened there? That looked like fun. But slowing down just a bit to ask yourself what hints and information is this program and this software giving me right now that I'm not aware of because I've just ignored that information because there's too much other stuff to focus on.
Yeah, I mean the other side of it is that you don't know what you don't know, and so until someone points it out, then you go. It just kind of goes into the blurry background of this is a huge program and I will never understand all of it. Josh and I have been using this program daily for like seven, 8 years now.
Too long.
Too long.
Yeah. We've had a couple of other podcasters do some stuff on our, like we had 3D Print General go through our program in 7 days, and then he appeared on somebody else's podcast, and it was fascinating to listen to him because on the one hand he's got this enormous amount of knowledge because he just sped through our book, but on the other, like we're saying here, there's all these little bits of information that just require time to seep into your brain. Where he's got a ton of knowledge, but he didn't necessarily know how to answer questions, but he could often actually do the thing that they were talking about. It was really neat to see it. So just know that you can learn this stuff really quickly, but to gain the depth necessary to really think about how to design just requires time and practice, and you'll get better with time. All right.
I think not just practice, but doing your own projects as well.
Definitely.
It's perfectly fantastic to work through our program, to go through our project, to do the challenge as well. That's fantastic.
That is amazing.
But then to take a little humdrum and then actually make your own projects at the same time is absolutely essential. We cannot recommend enough that our program isn't enough, and no book, no course will ever be enough if you don't then include your own project.
This is
If
a
you don't
jumping
then
off point.
include, yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. You
Start
need to have
here.
this. Yeah.
Yes, but then very quickly move to doing your own things. Although I will
Yes.
say there's one caveat there, and this I tend to tell people: go through most, if not all, all of the book before you think about doing complex designs. By complex, I mean
Yes.
multi-part. I mean moving motors. I mean, as you're you'll know, I
Assemblies.
think,
Yeah.
because we've had students who then design sketches that are incredibly complex. And
Yes.
really, it should be multiple sketches. And I think that the design thinking side of your brain hasn't caught up with how actually
Mhm.
to do it in the software. So I
Yeah.
usually recommend definitely play around as you go. Definitely make your stuff as you go. But do try to finish the book, because there's a lot of information throughout all of it that's going to apply to the way you think about making your design. And you'll have a much better starting point if, when you go to that complexity, you have a real foundation of this stuff. What do you think about that?
I completely agree. I think there is a balance point, because with our challenges, we do have some points where, we don't serve up all the information on a platter. You kind of do need to go in and kind of hunt and investigate for yourself to a certain degree. We want to push you as much as possible. But then knowing that balance point and then going a little bit too far and actually maybe going down the wrong pathway, or starting to learn and start to design in a maybe incorrect way, or in a way that's not as efficient,
Yeah, I was gonna say,
because we'll be going over that information a little bit
Yeah.
later.
Yeah.
That's always a really tricky part. So I don't know if there's any perfect way to, to say exactly how far is too much to learn on your own. Who knows? I think it's probably personal preference a little bit.
Yeah,
To be honest.
and really, the secret to learning anything is repetition. Do it a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
Just keep doing, keep making,
Do it a
keep
lot,
building.
mess up, and have some fun.
All right, I have the next question lined up here. I'm looking at the plastic building brick, aka.
We didn't do the coincident constraint yet.
Oh, sorry.
I'm going to race off that very, very quickly.
Yep.
Okay. Coincident, coincidence, two things, incident, one location, two things at the same location. Lovely. Etymology is awesome. So I have a circle and I have a line. I want to have the center of this circle and the left point of this line share the same location. Therefore, I'm going to use the coincident constraint. By the way, nobody actually knows if it's coincident or coincident. So just say either one that you'd like. As soon as I click that, they both have the same location. Fantastic. That's pretty easy. You can also have a point to another rectangle or the center of a circle, wherever you like. Does not matter. As long as it's 2 points, they can share the exact same location. That's pretty easy to understand. One weird thing is that you can also have points to lines that don't have to share the same location, but they can share an imaginary axis. This is where people get really confused. So if I have
imaginary numbers in math.
Yeah, where people are like, this doesn't make sense. It's like, no, play with me. It's fine.
No, it does. It works. Yeah.
It totally does work. Okay, I'm going to make a line right here. So I'm not going to add a coincident constraint between 2 points. I'm going to add it between the center of the circle and the line itself. And you'll see it jump down a little bit. You'll go, well, that actually isn't coincident because the center isn't then touching. So what's going on? And it actually is, but you can see there is an imaginary line that this circle and this line now share. It's really strange, but these two are absolutely coincidentally locked in place. In fact, you can add another coincident constraint between the origin and this circle. And now this line can now not move up or down, and this circle can now not move up or down because they are coincidentally constrained to the origin that is locked in place. The other kind of funky side of this is that I can do this to any line, even if it's at an angle to the origin. So I can add a coincident constraint between the line and an origin, and obviously it can move, or you can change its length. That's pretty obvious. It points to it. But you can also make it go radially outwards, which is really wacky. It is pointing to that central location. There's an imaginary line that points towards that, and as you click and drag it and move it around, it still shares that coincident relationship to it. So super important, but we'll move off of that. You said you had another question from the plastic.
Yeah, so some of the other, I think there's been some confusion around the plastic building brick, and I think it's twofold. So one, we found a bug in Fusion. It appears that when you sketch this project out now, if you make the text and then try to extrude, I believe that's the order of operations here, and I might be butchering exactly the issue, but I believe when you make the text first and then try to extrude, that it fails to compute this for some reason. Is that your memory?
So the idea with all of this is that there's a huge amount of information on all of this text. You can see that all of these letters have got multiple curved surfaces, angled lines, angled faces, and it also has a slight taper to it as well. So this surface, even though it just looks like a normal cylinder, it's actually got thousands of very small polygons. And then it actually has a circle on top, which is an infinite amount of points. And so there's actually a huge amount of information going on. And when you try and do the shell command, you're basically saying, hey, I need you to identify the entire block and then all of these curves, all of these surfaces at the same time, and then add a certain distance between all of that across the entire part. Shell is always a very computationally heavy tool, and when you try and push it too far, it just breaks. Just simple as that. It's a very persnickety tool.
Persnickety.
Persnickety, isn't that a good word? It's a very persnickety tool. It just doesn't like you sometimes. Things that seem simple, that you should be able to shell easily, it just doesn't work. This doesn't mean that all of Fusion is going to be, a bother, but it's not great.
Yeah, and I think there's another thing here too. So the shell tool can be finicky, persnickety, whatever word you prefer. I agree with that. I also think there's another tool that I've had experience with oddities, and that's the text tool. Some text isn't extrudable in the Fusion universe, and so people try to make custom. I saw this. Some people trying to make some keychains, and they were having issues extruding some of those letters, which is something that we've done before. By the way, you are frozen. Can you hear me? Nope.
Oh no, I can't hear you.
Nothing. You are frozen.
That's very strange.
You are completely frozen. Alrighty. Well, can you hear me in the chat? Chat, can you hear me? Anybody? Weird. Jake?
Hey, man. Sorry.
There we go.
For some reason, it completely turned off my mic or my headphones.
Totally fine. You are frozen, by the way.
I know. I don't know
your
why.
screen works just fine, and your voice works just fine. So let's just keep jamming through this. We were talking about the text tool.
Go ahead. Stop my camera so you don't have to look at my weird face.
Your frozen
there
face.
We go.
That's very strange. Yeah, it's very strange. Anyways, so the text tool. We had some people trying to extrude text to make a keychain using the text tool, and I was saying that sometimes that tool doesn't actually allow you to extrude text, and I think I have a guess as to why. Go ahead.
So I actually do know why, and we've actually run into this on a bunch of different programs. This is not just a problem in Fusion. This is a problem with lots of different programs. I'm just going to do a test right there. The idea is that you will have some of these texts. Oh, you can't actually see the list. Some of the font types that work just fine. So this is Arial right here, totally standard, Times New Roman, Calibri. These big list of very, very simple texts that have been in Microsoft or in Mac for 100 years. These will work just fine, but some of the fonts, they just don't want to work with you. Who knows why? And so even though you can make it in this sketch, you won't actually be able to extrude it. So this Arial, this works just fine, no problem. But if you try and do this to something like Arabic text, which again is also just as old as Arial and Calibri, for some reason it doesn't like it. I can't remember the name, but there's also the French font, which is like very thin cursive lines. Again, it does not like it. If you try and extrude it, it just puts up an error. Our logo that we have for Sliceform and for CAD class and in our book is a font called Futura that's been around since World War II. So it's been around for a long, long time, and it does not like to be extruded. It doesn't want to be accepted by some CAD programs. It also doesn't like to be accepted by other types of design software like CorelDRAW or Illustrator. For some reason, it just completely denies it. Who knows why, if there's something proprietary behind it, or if there's some actually computationally confusing elements to it, who knows? But some font will work and some won't. It's simply a matter of going back to your sketch, double-clicking it to open up the dialog box, and then messing around with all the different types of fonts you can do. Some of them will work just fine. Some of them won't. Let's see if I can try and find one. I don't think Arabic is on here. It used to be.
I think if you can find one quickly, that's fine. Otherwise, just know that sometimes you can't extrude it. It'll pop an error, and that just may not be a text that you can use.
Yeah. That falls into the category of sorry.
Yes, it's. I don't believe that's Fusion specific, like you were saying. So another thing here is there is some confusion, I think, around the plastic building brick on what you're actually clicking on when you're patterning the rectangles underneath, which turn into those, right. So one of the questions is, I think you responded to a couple people saying this. I too am having problems with selecting the rectangles as objects. I can select them before starting the mirror tool, but it won't let me select as objects if I clear my selection, hit escape, then launch the mirror tool. I think there is some confusion around what exactly people are clicking on when they pattern those rectangles. You might have a better understanding than I do. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does. So very quickly, I'm just going to project this in a surface. I'm just going to make some midpoint lines. Nothing too exciting right here. Okay, so now I've got some center lines that I can mirror about. So I'm just going to make a little rectangle very similar to what we do in the project. Put that right here, and I'll project it across this horizontal line. So I'm going to open up my mirror tool, and you guys can't see it, but it's asking me for the objects to select, and I cannot select the area inside. That's what I believe people are accidentally doing. When we say click the rectangle, and then they can't click the rectangle, we are saying to click the edges of the rectangle. That's the object's part. Then you want to select the mirror line, which is this part, and then click OK, and that's what is projecting over here. This is just a kind of funky thing. If you try and click, if you try and do it on the outside, I believe it allows you to do that. Actually, no, it won't. That's a lie. I almost did a lie. So you're actually asking you to select the edges of the rectangle, not the rectangle itself. You are able to click on the area without the mirror tool enabled, but as soon as you try and open up that mirror tool, it won't let you click it, and it's doing that on purpose. It's saying this isn't allowed. You have to click something else. So I believe that's corrected in the online version, but in the book that will be corrected when we do edition 2 next year.
So by online version, you mean the ebook. So by the way, just for all of you listening right now, we suggest you periodically re-download or re-go into the Google Drive to reopen the ebook, because we do make updates. About once a month at least?
Once a month at least. We're constantly getting information from the community, either on Discord or through our Zoom sessions, where people are saying, hey, this got updated, or hey, this tool is different, this tool's terminology got changed, or very simply, there's a mistake. And we go, okay, that's fantastic. Please give us all of that information. If someone goes, hey, there's a typo on page 300 something, give us that information. We will always incorporate that into it. We always want to make this course and this book and this Discord better and better and better. Just with every course, it's never going to be absolutely perfect, but we always want to be improving as we go along. So if you guys ever run into issues with the physical book, then you guys can always go into the ebook and just double check if there's some differences, if there's some different pictures, then something's been updated. If you go to the weekly newsletter, we also log down all the changes that we've added to the book. So you can always just cross-reference that and just see, yep, something's been changed, or if you had a problem with a previous project, absolutely go through and double check that, see if it's been updated.
Excellent, excellent. Sorry, I'm just reading through here. We've got another, I think something I want to address on the Invalid Gear project.
All right.
So do you feel, I think that is probably enough information for this one. The Invalid Gear, so we had a handful of people. That's, I think, the first challenge that we give people. So not the project itself, but what you do afterwards. I think that's the first challenge that we give people that is honestly pretty difficult. So let's see here. And I actually had a note I wanted to make. This is why I brought this up. So this is another point. Somebody in the comment section of the Invalid Gear said, honestly, if you need gears, it's better to just use add-ons. We do actually use the gear add-on tool later in this program, but I wanted to make a point here. The point of this design is to teach you how to design things in CAD. So the reason we did the Invalid Gear project was not to teach you how to make gears for all of your projects. The reason we did it was to teach you how to make a gear using the technologies that once existed so that you can get better at making CAD models. And I think that's a really important distinction, right? People go, well, why don't I just use add-ons for all of these things? And it's like, because that wasn't the point of this project. But I do agree that if you're going to use gears in your projects, most likely you're going to use the gear add-on tool. And like we said, we will touch on that later when you do the gear train project.
We also touch on it in the discussion section at the very end of the Invalid chapter.
There we go.
As Josh said, it's a bit of a meta purpose. It's not to show you exactly how to make the gear every time. It's more of the purpose of the class is to say, hey, this is how you organize and deal with very, very increasingly complicated sketches.
Yes,
and sketch
exactly.
profiles, and this is now getting kind of heavy.
Yep.
And if you haven't put all of your dimensions in the right locations, if things are kind of crossing over each other, if things are hard to see, if it's not organized, it's going to be pretty impossible to see what's going on. So the purpose of this class is not to make a gear, it's how to organize yourself. And then also to show you a little bit more in depth about the patterning feature, how it actually works, and a couple extra things here and there. But absolutely, making a gear, I use the plugin when we do the gear train later in the program. I do the gear plugin. I'm making a gear reduction project right now. I'm not going to design this from scratch. No, I'm using the plugin, dude.
Yeah, absolutely going to use the plugin. But again, I think the way we designed this program, what you need to understand is that we did each project has 3 to 5 new tools and techniques. So it's about the tools and techniques we're teaching you. It's not necessarily about the thing that you're making.
Yes, absolutely.
And do we want to touch on this at all, or we just want to let people try to figure out how to do it? I think the Helical Gear challenge is really tripping people up. I've seen one person do it.
Really? No, I've actually seen 2 people do it. It is way harder than people think it's going to be on purpose.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's spoil the party.
You want to spoil the party? We don't have to.
I'll spoil the party. That's all right.
I don't know. Let's. How about some additional hints? Let's give some additional hints. Maybe simplify it. Yes. Let's try to do it in a way that still allows people to
how about this? Do you know how to do it, Josh Manley?
I am not 100% sure.
How about this? I want you to give me what you think is the best way to do this, and then I'm going to try and figure out what you mean.
I'd have to go back into the book chapter and read it. I don't think I'm fully prepared to do it. I need to actually sketch it out on my screen. I don't think I can think about it abstractly right now.
That's fine. So the whole question that Josh is talking about is how do we make a helical gear So that is one that does not have straight teeth, but actually goes off at an angle. That actually has a certain spiral to it. These gears have been around for a long, long time, and they are very difficult to manufacture, and they're also very expensive to make. But they do last a hell of a lot longer than normal spur gears, and they're way smoother. And if you put two of them back to back, you can make something called a herringbone gear or a chevron gear, where it cannot move left and right axially. It's totally locked in place. They're super awesome. I just love learning about gears. Okay, so the idea is that you need to have a certain twist to this gear. And there's a couple different ways that you can do it. If you want to have a helical movement, then you can do this with the coil tool to make a spiral, or you can do this with the sweep tool and add in a twist angle, just like we did with the Mobius strip. This is the way that I think most people will do it.
Yep.
Where you actually you keep onto. Let me open the sketch back up. Where you keep this the sketch. I'll pull it out. Let's say 10 millimeters. Is that no -5? Oops, -5. There we go. Let me turn the sketch back on, and then I'll want to actually make a line. Whoops. Let me redefine that. Thank you very much. Then I actually want to make an axis for this to go along. And then I would want to sweep this tooth along that path. Let's say, because that's going to be a percentage, so I should have made that. Yeah, it doesn't really matter. And then I would add in a certain degree of twist angle. I think it's 20 degrees.
So somewhat like we would have used that in the Mobius strip project. Do we use the sweep tool in the Mobius?
Yes, we do.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
Yeah, and this is something that you can change around. As you can see, it's being this profile is being twisted. Then you can adjust this, pattern it about, and then you're all good to go.
Killer. We've got about 8 minutes left. Anybody in the chat have any questions that we haven't answered yet that we'll get to here in a bit? Let us know. If you are here right now, send us a little note in the chat. Otherwise, the geocache has been looking really cool. I've seen a lot of people print those out. I saw one on Twitter today that was really cool.
I love that project. I wonder how many people are actually hiding these geocaches around the world.
I'd love to know.
We've got students absolutely everywhere.
Let's see here. Did any other big questions come to mind for you? So I'm seeing some stuff with challenges and pawns. I'm seeing a lot of people making the domino. I love the domino project. I think that's at the right.
I was a domino
level.
kid.
Same. I think that was at the right level at the right time. I'm seeing a lot of people make the bottle project, which is really cool. The paperclip seems to be pretty popular. A lot of people completing those things.
The paperclip is one of those projects that I've never felt super excited about. The sweep tool is incredibly useful, but there's not many really fun projects with it. So if you guys have any ideas, any fun ideas that you use the sweep tool, let us know. And that may be, you may find that new project in edition 2 of the book. You never know.
Yeah, because we are constantly evaluating as you guys are leaving questions and comments on the Discord. And also, like I said, we said this at the beginning of the pod here. Let's say it again. Thank you so much for everybody that's joining us and coming in and welcome to the CAD network, CAD class network. We hope that you're going to find what it is that you've been looking for here. We're super excited to have you. Thanks for the donations. Thanks for the book purchases. Thanks for the online course purchases. It's been truly magical. Jake and I are hoping to continue to do this for a long time. So just know that we are glad to have you. It is amazing to have you. You are definitely supporting us to be able to make more content like this and kind of help you up your skills over time. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
We've got a lot of short content coming out too. I don't know that most of you in the Discord have probably seen it, but make sure you check us out at CAD Class on YouTube. the 60-second short form content, 60-second or less, I think is a really useful way of doing this, but for specific problems that you encounter. So the likelihood that we've discussed or will discuss issues and challenges that you have is really high, especially if you post it in the Discord.
Absolutely.
Anything else from your perspective, Jake?
I think this is all good and go.
I think this is a good
we may
spot to
call
stop.
It's a good stopping off point.
Yeah, and I don't know if your video still works, but looks like you're out of commission. Hey,
nope, I'm still done.
You are toast.
All right, guys. We will catch you next week.
Thanks for stopping by.
Thanks very much.
Cheers.
See you guys later. Peace.
Adios.